There she is, doing the Lord's work. What is she doing? Just chewing up my cables. That's really good. Thanks a lot, Selena. Doing such a great job. How about you just go all the way over here and goodbye. The New York Mets faced the Colorado Rockies at Coors Field last night, and for much of the night it looked like a classic case of missed opportunities. But then in the top of the ninth, a hobbled Francisco Linder, playing on a broken toe, delivered the go-ahead hit that sealed a very dramatic 4-2 victory for the New York Mets. That and more to talk about in this episode of the Mike's Mets podcast. Let's get into it. Roll the music. Welcome to Mike's Mets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Peixoto, and it was a very dreary day today, but it was a not so dreary night last night. Mets won 4-2 over the Colorado Rockies. Terrific win in a night that not a lot was going right for the Mets, but came through. And let's just set the scene for what was going to happen in this game. So Wednesday, Francisco Linder would take a pitch to the foot, breaking his right pinky toe. Ouch. He sits out Thursday's game. Tough loss for the Mets against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Just a blown situation in relief and some bad defense, and this is what we get. And they did seem to be missing Lindor's presence in that game, and the same had to be said for this entire game also. He is very much the MVP of this team. Pete Alonso may have the better stats. Juan Soto may make more money, but Lindor makes this team go, and we saw that last year also. We'll get into that before, but let's go to Friday's game, which was that Lindor was scratched again from the starting lineup, understandably so. They are trying to be cautious with Lindor. They don't want him to exacerbate the broken pinky toe. Lindor had other plans. He had told manager Carlos Mendoza that he was ready to contribute. This was not to play shortstop, but was available off the bench if they needed him to be there. And the Mets offense was struggling, that's to put it mildly. They went a dismal 2 for 15 with runners in scoring position. They left 12 men on base throughout the game. They are, I believe, flirting for 27th or 28th in the league for runners in scoring position. That's a stat. It's just terrible for a first place team. And this is a team that has major, contention plans. They need to get better with this in terms of getting runners in scoring position. And it does stem from the fact that the back half of their lineup is not as strong as the first half of their lineup. And players who we were hoping would be much bigger for the team have not really turned out that way, and they've been relying a lot on Alonso. They've been relying a lot on Lindor. They've been relying more so now on Soto, who's been getting a little bit more hot recently. And it would be the Alonso who did break through with a 2-run double. That was an important part of the Mets scoring because it was all of their offense. The Rockies would tie it thanks to a solo home run, and I believe it was an RBI single from Mickey Moniak. And all of a sudden, we have a tie game going into the top of the ninth. Kodai Senga was excellent in this one, pitched pretty well for an outing at Coors Field. 6 innings, struck out 6, walked 2. Threw a lot of pitches. This was Senga's highest workload performance of the season, and season high 109 pitches. Yikes. And he was in line for the win until the Mets bullpen again gave up the tying run. This was it's concerning to see that the bullpen's having a little bit more trouble in these late innings. I mean, it was always going to happen eventually that the things were going to kind of turn on their heads, but it's concerning that they having this much trouble, particularly against a team like the Rockies. So the eighth inning was a white knuckle affair. The Rockies loaded the bases, nobody out, and they were able to sneak out of it with a insane defensive play by Brett Beatty, who it was a runner on he was held on third. It was a double that got away, and then Beatty. So that's the bases loaded. Beatty comes up. Ryan McMahon lines a shot to third base. Beatty snags it, and then is in one motion basically is able to dive and tag the runner out for the unassisted double play. That was an insane defensive performance from Brett Beatty. And that brings us to the top of the ninth. And then Juan Soto singled, and Soto lost in all of this, had a terrific game at the plate. He was getting on base, had a lot of hits. Pete Alonso would walk after a Soto single. And then manager Carlos Mendoza makes the call. Francisco Linder, broken toe and all, steps up to the plate as a pinch hitter. And it took Lindor only 2 pitches. He would line a cutter from reliever Zach Agnes into right field. And Soto would score from second. Pete Alonso would also just get in. It was a very close play at the plate, but gave the Mets that extra insurance run and a 4-2 lead, which the Mets would hold, thanks to Edwin Diaz closing out the ninth perfectly for his 14th save, which was a very fitting end to a thrilling victory for the New York Mets. This isn't a new thing for Lindor. Obviously, he's had a terrific impact on the season thus far. He's been hitting with power. He's doing things defensively. Always what you expect him to do with the glove. But it is his ability to push through ailments, I think, that really defines him as this team's leader, the captain and everything but official position. And these ailments rarely affect his performance significantly. We saw that in last year. It was September where he missed like the last week and a half of the season, and missed 11 days, I think, with back pain. He had that strained back, whatever it was, and the Mets were clearly missing him during that period. They were struggling to maintain a wild card spot, and were battling with the Braves for that final for which wild card spot they would be able to get. And finally, would return late in that season and hit 2 home runs in the final 2 regular season games, which were obviously very dramatic. And then played every inning of every playoff game, and he was doing that, still not totally recovered from the back injury. So this is a guy who just doesn't like to miss games, and he's averaged, I think, well over 150 games a year for the past few seasons. He's just a guy who you can consistently put out there, and his performance, his ability to really lead the team is just really, really amazing. I'm consistently impressed with Lindor and how well he continues to perform among, obviously enormous pressure. This is a team that is built to contend now, and they need Lindor to be the star and to be the kind of the to borrow a term, the stir that straws the straw that stirs the drink, and that is very important for them. I can't really. The struggles with runners in scoring position really remain a concern. That's where they are probably in the worst position. I think around the same level as the Rockies, and those are 2 teams that are, separated by several, I think 30 wins at this point, and they have the talent to overcome these issues. Unlike the Rockies, that's why they are at opposite ends of the standings. But it is really telling that they are this bad with runners in scoring position, and they're still succeeding, and that's largely due to, heroic performances from from offensive players like Alonso and Lindor and Soto to some respect. But mostly their pitching staff, which has been outstanding. And looking ahead, the Mets are going to send Clay Holmes to the mound on Saturday with a 6-3 record, 3.07 ERA. Rockies will throw Carson Palmquist, who is terrible. He's 0-4 with an 8.5 ERA. So this is a matchup that's obviously going to favor the Mets very well. But as we saw on Friday, anything can really happen. Hopefully they do not struggle with runners in scoring position quite as much. They're playing in Coors Field. I mean, come on, guys. Let's really hit this team where, I mean, this is a historically terrible Rockies team. They have to be doing better against these teams and really start to show off what they're doing. It's a little embarrassing for them to be struggling this much against the Rockies. So hopefully we see them kind of put this game in the rearview mirror. We don't know what Lindor's status is yet as of right now when we're recording. It's only 9:19 a.m. at the moment, so we don't know if Lindor will be available for the game later today. But hopefully his status will remain similar to what it was on Friday night, and if nothing else, I mean, he can give them that boost off the bench like we saw. So, another episode where we're having technical difficulties. In case you haven't noticed, we are once again not in the normal recording spot in my apartment. So until we get that all sorted out, I am still doing this from just my laptop camera. So I'm sorry for the poor quality. Audio quality should be improved, though, because I was not able to record an entire episode because my microphone wasn't working. And we got that all sorted out, so hopefully everything is visible and audible for everybody. So while I was recapping the events of last night's game, I wanted to kind of take a look at what the injury report was looking like for the Mets, because crucially, they are going to have a lot of reinforcements incoming. So here's a summary of the latest Mets injuries. So, obviously Lindor with the fractured right pinky toe. That's still a day-to-day situation. They don't believe it's an IL stint worthy injury. He's going to play through the pain when it's tolerable. So probably he's going to be taking it light this weekend. But he will hopefully be available on an everyday basis for the most part, but it is a blow not to have Lindor out there on every day for now. And the hope is just that he's able to get enough rest and recovery time in the meantime until he is able to get back to at least close to 100% healthy. The other important piece of news was Sean Manaea, and once again, let's just say that this rotation should not be as good as they are. They are succeeding in a way that no one ever expected them to. Anyone who did expect this rotation to be as good as they have been is lying to you. No one thought that this was going to work. But the biggest miss for the Mets was going to be Sean Manaea. And everyone thought, like, oh, well, they're not going to have Sean Manaea, their ace from last season. It's going to really affect their chances. At the moment, though, they're so in... They don't really require Manaea to be back, and actually it behooves them to sort of let Manaea take as much time as possible getting back. So, still recovering from the strange right oblique. This was since going back to late March that he's been unavailable. He's been on the 60-day IL. He began, though, his minor league rehab assessment on June 6th. He will need more rehab starts to build up arm strength. Pitched fairly well in his first rehab start, but they are going to need him to accumulate probably close to a month back. So they're expecting his return. This is according to the official Met website. They're putting his return at late June, early July, potentially. And I would say probably will allow for early July. There is no immediate rush for him to come back. They are running out a 6-man rotation. That is the best rotation in baseball. They don't need Manaea to come back at the moment. And then once he comes back, then they're going to have a real situation on their hands, because I don't know what they're going to do. This is a great problem to have, but I don't know what they're going to do when Manaea comes back, because they're going to have to start moving people out of that rotation eventually and potentially into the bullpen. And I guess the two that are likely to fall off. Actually, before we go into that, let's just continue going into our IL list here. Mark Vientos down since June 3rd with the right hamstring strain. They diagnosed it as a low-grade hamstring strain, which is good. These are usually the ones that are recoverable within a couple weeks. So they do plan on Vientos being available before the end of the month. So they're expecting as well, probably late June, early July at the very latest. And receiving treatment for the next 10 to 14 days. So if all goes well, and it should go well, because this doesn't appear to be a very major injury, Vientos should be back, and hopefully is able to figure out what has been causing him so much trouble, because the numbers have just been exceedingly bad, and he's lost his third base spot almost to Brett Beatty. There's a good chance that Beatty will never relinquish this spot, given how badly Vientos has been playing. So keep that in mind. Brooks Raley, remember Brooks Raley, recovering from Tommy John surgery. He's now throwing bullpens and facing live hitters. They are putting his return at also late June or potentially also early July. So having Raley in there is going to be an important thing. They don't have a left-handed reliever at the moment. That's not to say a left-handed reliever that they were planning on having on their roster. No A.J. Minter. Minter's gone. No Danny Young. Danny Young's gone. So you have to make do with what you have. They've auditioned Genesis Cabrera, and now the latest has been Jose Castillo, who has been pitching pretty well, I will say. And again, a lot of credit has to go to the Mets front office and how well that they are able to kind of navigate and find value in where value seems to be lacking. Locating a top-end left-handed reliever is not easy. I'm sure that will be a focus at the trade deadline. We'll be trying to find a bridging left-handed reliever who can help this team and get to Diaz, and we'll mix in well with Reed Garrett and Huascar Brazoban as the key late-inning relievers. But for now, they're making do with Castillo. Raley does throw a random element into this, because Raley, before the injury, was pitching extremely well. Was great. Was having great success with the Mets, and then lost to Tommy John. They are now expecting him back sometime late June, and then if Raley succeeds, there may not be a need for them to go looking for a left-handed reliever if Raley is able to look like the Raley of old. So another interesting element for the Mets, and just kind of piling in all this, that the Mets are having so much success, but they also have all these guys who are potentially returning within the next few weeks. It's making it very exciting. Another one, Frankie Montas. Remember, Frankie Montas was supposed to be a major portion of this starting rotation. They signed him to that contract, and he looked like to be a definite member of the rotation. Almost immediately got hurt. He was put into, thanks to a high-grade right lat strain. He's been on the 60-day IL ever since. He had began his rehab assignment last month, May 24th. And has been, as of now, has made 3 rehab starts. They're going to need him to continue to up his pitch count in order to get him close to around like 70, 80 pitches. But they're expecting him as mid to late June at the latest. They're expecting him to be coming back very soon, within probably the next couple weeks. Him coming in there is another thing where they're going to have to kind of figure this out. So let's go into now. The Mets rotation has been very successful. They've gotten by with a rotation of Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, and Clay Holmes, and now Paul Blackburn as well. So you have six starters, all of whom have had great success. Who do you take out when you have a returning Sean Manaea and a returning Frankie Montas? What do you do with this kid in this situation? It's a great problem to have, but it's still a problem. It's still something where they have to kind of work out what exactly they want to do with all these pitchers. And my guess would be Tyler McGill. And I say this with grudging respect for McGill because it was a terrible performance in that first inning against the Dodgers that really screwed them and ended up being sort of the reason why they lost that game, because he immediately put them in a 4-run hole that they came back from, but gave the Dodgers 4 runs in the first inning. Not great. He did bounce back from that point on. It was a great performance from McGill from that point on, but it was still a terrible first inning. And these are the things that kind of frustrated me with McGill, was that for all of his success, and he does have that great live arm, strikes out a lot of batters. There are those days that he just kind of implodes, and it's something that we haven't really seen from the rest of the Mets rotation as of yet. Knock on wood. They've been they've been doing pretty well in terms of keeping that off the table. McGill is a highly unreliable pitcher in these cases. I mean, we saw a great start from him the beginning of the year, and this is not unlike 2022, where he got off to that incredible start, and people were like, "Wait, Tyler McGill, is this guy like really great?" And we saw from that point on, it was that same season. It was a lot of success early on. Then the following month, it dipped back down, and then it was kind of this up and down performance for basically the next 3 years, where you could basically flip a coin, and you would be like, he might be pitching well tonight. He might not be pitching well tonight. There was really no consistency in terms of his performances. And that's kind of what we're getting now with McGill, is just that it's been a lot of middling performances since that outrageously hot start to the season in April. And now what we're getting now is McGill looking more and more like a guy who might lose his rotation spot. And McGill's rotation spot was never a guarantee. It was expected that he was probably going to be fighting for the 5th or 6th rotation spot anyway. But his early season success has given people some expectation that he's going to be a major part of the rotation. I don't think so. I think McGill is the likely candidate to get pushed out and moved over into the bullpen. His peripheral stats are not great. I mean, like, he's not succeeding really in anything. His pitches are not great. The fastball, off speed, and breaking stuff. None of them are particularly exciting stuff. He's basically just a middle of the road starter who's just having a lot of success in terms of his pitching. A lot of it is his extension off the mound. That's been probably his biggest success point. And his velocity, which has always been solid, it's just that fastball is just very straight, and so he doesn't really have a ton of movement on that pitch. And given his off speed and breaking stuff are just kind of very pedestrian, seems a little harsh, but it's just very average, and he's just a very average in terms of his stuff pitcher. He's just having an unusual amount of success with it, and he's getting by. And you could say this for a lot of the Mets pitchers, that a big part of their success is that they've been putting the ball on the ground consistently over and over and over again. It's what Peterson does so well. It's what Griffin Kang does so well. It's what Clay Holmes does so well. And for McGill is the surprising point of it, because McGill's strikeout rate has been fantastic. It's a career best strikeout rate for Tyler McGill. But this does not always lead to great success from the starting rotation. It might lead to success from the bullpen. The other problem is that they don't have a lot of like bullpen spots that are available. Who do they take out? Max Kranick? Max Kranick has been pretty good for them, so why take him out and move in Tyler McGill? There is a chance that they move into sort of a long relief spot rotation sort of spot in that bullpen, or they outright trade him. That is also a possibility. The Mets have an excess amount of starting pitching. They're not going to be able to use all of these guys. As much as I would like them to be able to use like an 8-man rotation, like it would be crazy to see, but as much as I would like to see that, they're not going to be able to use all these guys. Some of these guys have to go. McGill is a likely candidate because McGill's gotten off to a great start, and there's teams that are going to be looking at McGill as a potential rotation stalwart going forward for their team. Maybe a team like the Baltimore Orioles, who are probably going to be mired in last place for the remainder of the season, and no one has really any major expectations for them. So why not make a trade to a team that is desperate for pitching and has assets to replace, namely someone like Jeff Passan had said in his article that came out earlier this week. Possibly Cedric Mullins, the center fielder for the Baltimore Orioles, who is a veteran who has pop, who is a consistent player. He's not a terrific defender, but in platoon with Tyrone Taylor might be a better option. Not necessarily platoon, but maybe Taylor operating more as a late inning replacement, maybe taking over for the last couple of innings. to play his outstanding defense. But that would be an option I could see for Cedric Mullins. Frankie Montas would seem to be likely a rotation guarantee because they did sign him to a contract. They signed him, and he's making the most money out of a lot of these guys, not Griffin Canning. Canning is probably the next one who is the one who's likely to be removed. And I say this after Griffin Canning pitched an outstanding game against the Los Angeles Dodgers. And these are the performances that you are like, well, like he's doing really well, but against top teams like the Los Angeles Dodgers, they're not so well. It's not the case with Canning. Canning defies expectations consistently. He pitched great against the Chicago Cubs, pitched great against the Los Angeles Dodgers. They are struggling so much to figure out a way to beat Canning. And unless Canning beats himself, where he's leaving pitches over the plate and getting hit hard and giving up home runs, that's really the only thing that he can really struggle with. Other than that, like it's hard to like justify taking him out of the rotation. And then you have like Peterson's a must, Senga is a must, Clay Holmes is a must. So you throw him, Montas, Manaea, and Pearson, you're looking at like a potential six-man rotation of that six, but Canning is the guy that people have kind of pointed to as possibly a major regression candidate. We just haven't seen it yet. And until he does regress, I have to say that he has to be a part of that rotation as well. Paul Blackburn is not going to stay long with this team. And I say that with like a lot of respect for Blackburn's like return from the IL, which was fairly spectacular. I mean, he had the spinal fluid leak late last season that he had to have. He's recovered from, then had additional issues that he just returned back from, and then pitched a great game against the Los Angeles Dodgers. In his return from the IL, he's given, you're going to pitch the first game of the series against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he blanked them. It was absolutely insane how well Blackburn looked, and again, it's great for the Mets in terms of being able to audition these guys. I don't know. Blackburn also is probably a bullpen. Either they move him to the bullpen or they trade him. So him and McGill are probably the two that fall out of this six-man rotation that they're planning. And I would expect them to go with Senga, Manaea, Montas, Holmes, Peterson, and Canning as your group, and that's a great mix of lefties, righties. You have a lot of different styles. It really does make them look very potentially very impressive. We still haven't seen Montas pitch with the Mets yet, so like he got hurt so early on that maybe it's a little bit of an early expectation to say that like, well, they're not going to keep anybody else with Montas, but the guaranteed contract really does kind of play in Montas's favor that they're going to keep him around. So just to keep that in mind as well. Lastly, I also wanted to point out that Jose Siri and Jesse Winker are also expected to be returned back in June. This is the month of returns. June. Everyone's coming back now. Jose Siri with the fractured left tibia. They are expecting him back pretty soon in terms of that. He will need to also undergo a minor league rehab assignment, but until he begins that, they are still expecting him to be back sometime late in June. Jesse Winker, recovering from the right oblique strain that befell him earlier in May. He has not, as of yet, restarted baseball activities. They're putting him his return at late June, probably early July as well. So you're throwing in all these guys who are coming back from their IL stints to a team that's among the National League's best teams, and you're throwing back all these potential replacements, and then you're throwing in the fact that we're going to be coming up on trade deadline very soon, and it makes it a very interesting time right now for the New York Mets and for New York Mets fans as well, because we're seeing a team that's succeeding with not all of their parts playing well or even at all. So we again the 27th or 28th in runners in scoring position is just terrible. I mean, really awful performance. They shouldn't be succeeding as much as they have been, but they're getting by. And I think it was Beatty who had said it. It was, I think, a few nights ago, who he said, this team is succeeding even though we're not playing as well as we should be. Like they're not playing at 100% ability right now. And that's an amazing statement, because as successful as they've been this year, they are clearly not at 100% in terms of not only their roster health, but also players who have not gotten off to great starts, like Juan Soto or Francisco Alvarez. They're getting kind of middling production from Brandon Nimmo, and they're getting middling production from Mark Vientos and Francisco Alvarez, and the list goes on. There's a lot of guys who have not really stepped up their game, and they need to step up their game as the season progresses. And coming up on the trade deadline will be interesting because the Mets are going to have to make decisions in terms of what do they do with this team who has, obviously major playoff expectations, and they need to continue to succeed. So that does it for this episode of the Mets podcast. Join us next week. We're going to continue to break down. I say next time. Join us next time as we break down more of the biggest stories from the New York Mets. Until then, keep an eye on those standings. And remember, in baseball, even a broken toe can't stop a true leader. Thank you very much, Francisco Linder. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to Mike's Mets podcast. If you haven't already, please follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a like and a comment. It helps so much. Finally, please follow our Twitter and Blue Sky pages. You can find us at Twitter at Mike's Mets Pod, all one word, and on Blue Sky at Mike's Mets Podcast.bsky.social. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day or evening, and let's go Mets.